Hello, fellow chess assassins and chess friends. Welcome to my channel. One way of accomplishing any opening in reference to a certain playing style is to set up the first however many moves of the position. Then you want to practice on the setup and analyze the board. For example, if your opponent is an attacker, aggressive, tactical, or even positional, then that is what you want to do. So basically, a good way to improve much faster is for you to find an opponent and record your games. And then you can find something like ChessBase. Now those games that you record will be the games of your opponents that you play on a regular basis. Another way to do it is to do a Google search of games played by international masters or even masters. Record those games and then submit them to ChessBase. ChessBase has a free database with a training function, and you can also set it to go through all of one's variants automatically. Now, before we get into the lesson, I want to show you something. Go to your Google page, just like I went to my Google page here, and I'm going to go and tap in the box up here in a search bar. And I posted the link in the description. Maybe you can just click on the link and it'll take you right to it. Or you click on the link and paste it here. And click on ChessBase and it takes you here. Now once you get here, then I guess you tap on this little box here in the bottom, tap on the bottom of the board, and you're going to see some icons on the bottom. Go to the right, the bottom right, tap on the bottom right, and it'll bring you to this page. Log in, settings, play chess, live chess. And I'm new to this myself, so let me see, let me scroll down, and you see where it says my games. I'm gonna tap on my games and it brings me here, and this is a game, I guess a game that I recorded in the past, played between Magnus Carlsen and Fabian Caruana. And here are the little buttons here, just to show you one feature. The Ruy Lopez. Okay, I'm gonna click on book here, book. And if you click on book at the bottom here, and let me see, scroll down, let me scroll back up. Click here, book there. Let me try list, search player. Maybe I can type Nakamura.
There. See what I get. Search.
And here is the position.
Let me click on videos, and it brings me to this page here in ChessBase. Scroll.
Now let's get into the heart of the lesson.
Okay, first question. What are some opening ideas against Black's Sicilian defense? For example, after e4, c5, perhaps knight e2? What is the idea behind knight e2? Normally the knight is developed to f3. But what is the idea behind knight e2? Well, let's see. Knight f6, right? Knight on b to c3, knight c6. Now instead of playing d4 here to transpose to normal Sicilian lines, think about it. White is willing to sacrifice the g4 pawn. Now we're going to look at two possibilities. First, we're going to see what happens if Black captures the pawn, and then we're going to look at Black declining the pawn sacrifice. So first, let's look at knight takes g4. Now my idea is that White wants to get an open file in order to attack the king side. So bishop g2, e6, castle, bishop d6. And now pawn to f4, king side castle, pawn to d3, and knight h6, knight g3. b6, e5, bishop e7, queen h5, pawn to f5, ef6 en passant, bishop recaptures, knight on c to e4. Now, watch closely. White's pieces are trained now to the king's side. d5, knight takes f6 check, queen recaptures, and now bishop d2. Black accepts the pawn on b2, and now f5, queen e4 check, king h1, knight g4, knight e2, queen e4, and now bishop to c3. Knight e3, bishop takes g7. Now notice how the g file is now open. So White has an avenue of attack starting from the point where Black accepted the gambit on g4. King recaptures on g7 and queen g5 check. Alright, regaining the piece. Queen takes e3. Now you can practice this line here. Now let's go back to move 1. So after e4, c5, and the idea is knight to e2, Knight f6, knight on b to c3, knight c6, g4, g6. So black does not accept it. And now bishop to g2. And the line continues, bishop g7.
There's a feature of this opening I want you to recognize. Notice how white prepares to push the king side pawns. Immediately get the pawns rolling on the king side to attack black. But keep in mind that the king is still sitting on that side of the board, so make sure that you study these lines so that you'll know which positions that you will be able to do that, because you will not be able to push king side pawns in other situations. So just be careful.
Knight to d4, bishop f2, e6, and now b3. So notice how black's bishop on g7 is behind the pawn on d4. So that pawn is fixed on d4. Knight c5, knight b2, bishop b7, rook on f to e1, f5. Shots fired. Now black turns the focus to the king's side. ef5, gf5, knight a4, trade on a4, bishop takes g2. Alright, king takes g2, e5, rook e2, queen b6. King h2, rook on f to e8, f takes e5, d e5, and now queen to g5. Queen to g6, trade on g6, and now we have arrived at the endgame. A count of pawns. White has 4, 5, 2, blacks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Even pawn count. Both sides have 2 rooks and a bishop. We're going to look at another plan for white against the Sicilian. After e4, c5, knight e2, d6, followed by g3 and g6. Okay, what is the idea? This actually is a normal reaction to white's plan to fianchetto the bishop on f1. White's going to fianchetto the king's bishop, so black does the same thing in this variation. Bishop g2, bishop g7. So the question to ask, which bishop will prove to be more effective? The bishop on g2 or the bishop on g7? This is also a plan for white. With this setup, since the knight on b1 is going to be placed on d2 normally, then a plan here is to play the pawn to c3 with the idea of pushing the d pawn to d4. Knight f6, d4. Castle, queen c7, knight on b to d7, knight a3. So white has a different plan with the knight instead of developing the knight to d2.
So the idea is that white has flexibility with the knight and can play the knight either to c4 or c2, but if the c4 can always swing back to d2. Okay, when you're using restraint or defending on one side of the board, keep in mind that where little to no action is, for example, on the king's side, there's probably little to no action. I'm not going to say no action, but very little. You notice how black is attacking on the queen side. So that's where white draws the attention to the queen side. So it's a queen side battle. In addition to guarding the g5 square, stopping black from trading on g5,